Hey there, and welcome back again to YAS, a stripper podcast. On this podcast, we'll discuss how classifying each other as people and workers is dangerous to society and marginalized groups of people. We'll also talk about the climate in and outside of the strip clubs and all of the amazing things that strippers do. And of course, we'll talk about all of the things in between. I'm your queen, A.M. Davies, and this is YAS, a stripper podcast. Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of YAS, a stripper podcast. Today's format is very different. We decided to have strippers call in from all over the world. We have mostly American strippers, but also from the UK and from Canada as well. And the reason I wanted to do a podcast this way, an episode this way, is because I really wanted to hear other people's voices and get a real idea of what's going on with them. And I just wanted to listen. And I was telling somebody the other day about how throughout this journey that I've been on, which is being an advocate for strippers, that I had to learn over time how to truly listen. And I thought I was a good listener for a long time. And it kind of just dawned on me overnight one day that I wasn't really truly listening to what strippers want or what they're going through. I had learned all this new information and I was just spitting it back at them as information that they needed to know. And it was the only information they needed to know. And it was the right information. And I didn't take the time to sit back and think of their perspectives or their individual experiences. And so that's why we're having this format today. Basically, so I can shut the fuck up as much as possible, which is really hard for me to do, and just listen to what's going on in their world. Because quite frankly, I spend a lot of my time being very angry at club managers and owners, but there are people out there that are at least trying to do the right thing. And I think that I need to be reminded that people are people, and in every industry and in every part of life, there are people who do things that you really like and appreciate and people who do things that you don't. And the strip club industry is no different. It's made up of people. And it's how people choose to be, not about how owners or employers of strip clubs choose to be. It's how those people choose to be. And that's what the real crux of all of this is. It's determining who's helping and who's hurting, and to create a dialogue around that so we can all learn and figure out how to support each other, because this is going to take a lifetime to reform this industry and create happiness and abundance around it. So we're not doing 4-for-1 today. We're not doing stripper tips. We are just listening to these amazing dancers tell their stories and to connect with them. So I hope you enjoy.
Well, you've got Kit Monroe here with Phobee Ray. There.
Oh, I'm so glad you called in. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell everyone where you're calling from?
Yeah, we are calling from the beautiful city of Charleston, South Carolina.
I love it. And who's we?
This would be Phobee Ray and Kit Monroe.
Okay, great.
And yeah.
It's just the two of you?
2-for-1.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we're a package deal today. We're giving you a 2-for-1 special.
I love it. I love it.
Yes.
So do you guys live together, or are you just visiting each other?
No, we're just very dear friends, and we've just known each other for a very long time, and we work in the same industry. So
great. Perfect. Well, so that leads me to this question. How long have y'all been strippers for?
I've been dancing for 1.5 years.
Okay.
And I have been dancing about a year. So before that, I did other types of things in the industry, but as far as working in a club, a year. So.
And when you say other types of things in the industry, do you mean the sex worker industry?
Yes. So I've been a webcam model. I currently have an OnlyFans, so that's something that I'm doing. But yes, I've basically mostly webcamming before that.
Gotcha. Okay. So what was life like for you both? I'd like to hear from both of you separately, obviously. What work was like for you before things started to get weird with COVID? Were you making money? Were you being treated well, etc.?
So this is Phoebe Ray. I'll go first. I was making money. Obviously, there was the good days, the bad days. It's a hit or miss, but normally you have a pretty basic baseline. Holidays, of course, will bring in different crowds. Weekends, like football games, etc. And then the virus hit, and I feel like a lot of people just didn't have direction on how to panic. And the way things were unfolded, there wasn't really a lot of structure on the foreseeable future. So it just kind of went dead silent. And then we were all, well, my personal club was forced to close.
Okay.
So, and this is Kit. And so basically with our situation, we basically, as far as things before the club, it's very similar to what Phoebe said. We definitely have a huge tourist crowd here. We get a lot of big weekend parties and things, but as we got closer to realizing this was something that was coming to the US, thankfully our operations managers started to take precautions as much as possible, just making people sanitize the second they come in the door, sanitize before dances, after dances, all of that. But my boss actually ended up with corona, so the day after the club closed, he ended up with corona, but he is thankfully recovered, so that's awesome. But it's definitely been a hardship for all of us, because no one was prepared for this. Obviously no one in the world was prepared for this, but it's one of those things that you just have to adapt. And thankfully there's a great, people enjoy things online. So if you can find ways to interact with people still, and a lot of your regulars you can, bring over to online, at least still have that connection with them. So
yeah, the regulars, maintaining connections with regulars is so important. And I'm sure it's just as important for them as well, because you provide a regular service to them, which is companionship and friendship, and like you just
absolutely.
Yeah. So do you feel like your employers were informative for you during this time?
Well, I mean, I think it was kind of like, as everyone, they took it as in stride, because it wasn't something that anyone was prepared for, but they definitely tried to do their best to inform us how they wanted to take safer procedures. However, it's a contact job, so no matter how many times you sanitize your hands, if you're giving a lap dance, you're still within that 6 feet distance. So um, it just got to the point where we had to shut down when Charleston, the ordinance of all the bars, had to shut down. So
Sure.
that's when, it was
Did
the city order.
did they like reach out to you and text you or email you, or did you just have to kind of find out on your own?
No, he called me. I was literally at the hair salon getting my hair done, and said, "This is the last day we're going to be open, and I don't know when we're going to open back up." So he did personally call me, the operations manager, but we obviously have no idea. Of course, nobody does when we'll be back open. So,
do you both work at the same club?
I work in a different club. I actually work in Jacksonville, Florida, and it was pretty much the exact same procedures. We had an ordinance to close down all non-essentials, which included clubs, bars, like concert venues, even certain restaurants weren't allowed to be open. So we had to close pretty abruptly as well.
Okay. Did they talk to you about filing for unemployment? Like, was there any like, I've heard some stories where people are like, the employers are like, don't you dare file for unemployment. Like, I'm hearing some stuff like that. So what was that like?
that's interesting. Well, we personally have had no guidance whatsoever as far as post closing. It's kind of been figure it out on your own. So thankfully, like I said, I took the opportunity to start an OnlyFans, but if I otherwise, no, they have not talked to us about unemployment. There's been a lot of confusion, as you and I talked about before, about the stimulus, whether people in the industry are able to get that or not. So it's been very confusing, and no, not a lot of direction from my club, but I'll let Phoebe answer.
But there was really no direction as like what our second steps were going to be from closing.
Like, they're like, we're closed.
Right. And the fact that if this is Kit again, my operations manager the next day, ended up with Corona losing 30 pounds in a week. Obviously, he was in no position to, try to handle anything beyond that.
Well, what about, there has to be other employees, other people to help with that type of stuff, right?
You would hope so. But unfortunately, there was no direction. So.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. So we did hear from a stripper on one of our calls that she did receive her stimulus check.
Interesting. Do you happen how she went about that procedure?
She filed her taxes.
Okay, see, and that's the thing. It's been very confusing because I even saw articles like in the Huffington Post.
Yeah, no, the Huffington Post gets our stories wrong all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, they did actually revise that article because it was extremely misleading initially. The original article was stating that small business loans would be, sex worker owned businesses would be excluded from the small business loans. Now, the caveat with that is that we found out through our union reps is that if the business also makes money from selling bottled water, soda, or liquor, anything besides just the sex work, that they would still apply for the small business loan. That they would just say that they sold something else. So even that in and of itself was misleading. There was a way around it. Now the businesses that it does affect would be like sex toy makers and porn production companies and things like that like solely their income is from sex or sex work. So yeah, the Huffington Post always gets it wrong.
Totally. One of my main things was personally, like, I know that my clients will come in and they'll buy bottles, like multiple bottles at a time, and I know that brings in a pretty hefty revenue, and that's just me, not including all the other girls there. If it's a small business and they're able to apply and like get a business loan, why haven't we been contacted to know if we'll get a portion of that if we're bringing in that money to them?
Because I don't know, that's a question for them. How willing to share with you are they? Do you pay house fees? Are you paying to work?
Yes, there's always a tip out.
Well, so every club's different. Like literally the club across the street from us, they have to pay like $45 like to even just dance. At our place, it's literally you only have to tip the DJ $10, and if you want to tip the managers, that is totally solely up to you, which is why it's one of the most preferred clubs in Charleston to work at. But it's most clubs you have to pay a
tip out,
a payout. I can't speak yet.
Yeah, exactly. And what I want to also follow up with the small business loan thing is because there's so much confusion around it, a lot of people aren't applying, just like a lot of strippers didn't apply for unemployment.
Right. And I haven't done it yet, and I need to. So that's what I've realized in the past couple of days is I have been misinformed and I'm a little confused to figure it out. So
yeah, and so something that I've been saying, not on podcasts as much, so I'll say it here now, is how much the media gets our story wrong, because we're obsessed with stories about strippers and sex workers, and they know that the more eyes they get, the more prominent they are as a writer, and so they know they're going to pull in these viewers. They don't give a fuck what the information is. They just want it to be about strippers, and they get, even me, I personally have been in a situation where they got something about me very, very wrong, and they would not change it. I wrote, and this is Huffington Post, and I wrote to them 3 different times and said, please change this information about me. It's false. And they would not change it. And they wouldn't even answer me back.
It's like a whole line of unprofessionalism.
Absolutely. So be very careful about what you read in the media regarding sex workers if it's not written by a sex worker.
Well, and that's what I was actually going to touch base on. I actually have an article coming out in the Charleston City paper, which is just our local paper that will be out next week. They contacted me because they felt that there was a lot of emphasis on food and beverage because it's a very big tourist town, which we have I don't know if you've ever been to Charleston, but there's 1,000 restaurants downtown. So it's a very big part of people's income here. So basically they contacted me and said they really wanted to do an article focusing on what was going on in the sex industry and how we are having to adapt to online. And so they've been very supportive, and I'm excited to see the article, and I'm hoping that it should bring some positive attention to the situation. And because some people don't really even realize, at all, what is going on with that.
I'm really glad that they came to you and passed the mic to you.
It's so nice to have a voice for everyone, because, like, there's so many people that just need to have that voice, and I'm very honored.
Please share that information with me so that we can post about that to our audience, and let everyone know that a sex worker got to write a story about sex workers. That's that's rare. It happens, but it's rare. So would love to support you in the visibility of that.
It's been the highlight of my quarantine, besides my quarantine birthday. So yes, for sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully this can bring a domino effect as well. Like, once papers start realizing that this is getting a lot of attention and it's a real voice coming from someone who's personally affected, I really do feel like more people will jump on the bandwagon for stories.
I hope so. Here's hope. I mean, that's a big reason why we're doing this podcast the way we're doing it. Normally we sit down with one guest for about an hour. And I've got 12 of you, 13 now, since there's two for one right now, but 12, 15-minute calls to have you share your voice so that everyone can hear, like, it's different, but it's hard. It's easier for some, but this shit is hard, and we just need to tell our story. So thank you so much for taking the time to call in and do this with me.
I can't wait to hear from, everyone else that you have talked to, because I know stories are different in the way they've been handled. And I do want to take a moment and definitely say that I've really appreciated the support that I've had from the local community and beyond from this transition, and being able to try to build up my OnlyFans, which I will go ahead and say is OnlyFans/Kit_Monroe. And I'm also on Instagram, The Burnless Flame. Twitter is It's Kit Monroe. So again, OnlyFans is Kit_Monroe. But the point is, I've really been able to still connect with people that I've, been dancing for a year on, and it's been really awesome.
That's great. Phobee, do you want to tell people where to find you?
So I'm actually still in a personal transition, but I definitely will be on OnlyFans, and it'll be Phobee Ray, and that will be coming up very shortly.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for calling in, ladies.
Thank you so much.
If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email us at yesastripperpodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at yesastripperpodcast. And you can catch the show on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, anywhere that you can find podcasts. We hope you tune in next week. I've been your host, A.M. Davies. See you soon.